Guys, we used to do this show at 5 o'clock Pacific on Mondays, and then we started doing it at 10 a.m. Pacific on Mondays, and now we just kind of do it at whenever we could sort of find time around Monday or shortly thereafter.
Well, that's not fair to say. Can you turn up my headphones a little bit, my friend?
Yes.
I don't feel like that's fair to say. It's mostly more as soon as I hit the third trimester, that's great. All bets were off. You know what I mean? So we still want to get this out to you once a week, and obviously the goal is always at 10 a.m. on Mondays.
Or somewhere in that
But
vicinity.
turns out, well, I just don't want to set the precedent of like, oh yeah, we don't really care. Like we just like do it whenever, because that's not true. It's just that like my body is
said
literally
we
not
either-
my own.
We either do it Monday morning or as close to that as we can finagle.
Right, but only because the human that I'm growing is like constantly beating me up.
That is true.
Like it's frighteningly exhausting.
You're really into that word right now, frighteningly.
Am I?
You
Because I asked how to spell it earlier,
Well, you used it on a post today.
and that's it. I feel like that's twice.
Okay.
3 times makes a pattern. You always do that. Anytime somebody says something, you're like, oh, you love that thing. It's like, what? No, I don't.
Well, you've used frighteningly substantially more lately than I've seen you use it in our entire time together. So I'm just making a note, and now the world knows.
Okay. Well, now they know.
Okay, so we were talking about a couple things in the car, and you're like, save it for the pod.
Well, because, in our household, it's like anything that happens in the news, and Alex wakes me up and he's like, oh, did you hear about this? I'm like, no, I didn't. I just woke up. So,
Not an accurate representation. I
I mean, I feel
never.
like it's pretty good.
No, it's wildly inaccurate. I never wake you up and say, "Did you hear about this?" No, you're up. I'm in the morning. I have things to do, so I get up and I go. Usually to the gym, sometimes to take our dog on a walk or whatever. But I have things to do with my day, so I get moving. You're like, I'm tired. That's you every morning, and that's fine if that's what you need.
No. We're going to walk this back here, okay?
Okay.
I have things to do,
Mhm.
but I'm also 35 weeks pregnant, which means my body has officially been hijacked.
You're 35 at 35.
And I mean, I would love to be able to have a full day. I genuinely get off on the idea of when I'm like, y'all, once I got this baby thing handled, okay, we got our schedule down. I can carve out an hour to work out,
Sure.
and then maybe find another hour to shower, Oh, and then I'm looking good. I'm feeling good. I'm getting emails back within 24 hours. Hot. That turns me on.
There you go. So anyway,
Do you notice that? That's what he does. He waits until he can speak.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot else to say to that other than, yeah, I get. Have I not said over and over again how undercredited women are when they're pregnant? I think because pregnancy is so commonplace, and it's like most of the time people either aren't pregnant or not with a spouse that is currently pregnant. So even when you're not pregnant anymore, you and I will forget about this time probably. But in the moment, being in the throes of pregnancy with you, I have a new appreciation of how much work it is.
Well, it's not fair. What a racket, okay? Because the first trimester, pretty rough, right? You either have morning sickness or you're super fatigued. You probably have a lot of anxiety, right? Because unfortunately the percentage for miscarrying is much higher, so you're really kind of preoccupied and thinking about it, and it's kind of a tough go. Second trimester feels great. You look great, you feel great. People, want to talk to you about it, and you're like, oh, it's great. I feel so good. I feel so happy, And then you get to the third trimester, and it's just like, ah! And that's all it is. For 3 months. For 3 months. And now I'm angry. I'm angry at other women that are just like, oh, had a baby. Yeah, we're like good. We feel good. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
Seems unlikely that that's actually how they honestly feel.
Highly unlikely. Speaking of which,
Final episode dropped today. And that's, that's all she wrote for season 1.
That's a wrap on season 1, baby.
TBD on other seasons.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted. So okay, so you wanted to bring what to my attention today?
Well, a few
Let's
things.
dive into the
Well, you
news.
saw I mean, every week there's a real or fake cancellation request. And I guess Erin from The Office, aka Ellie Kemper, apparently Twitter wants her gone.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, I'll fill in the blanks. Tell me what you know, because I know you saw a couple things.
Excuse me. Literally all I saw was uh, a comedian friend of ours posted something that I'm going to botch. His response was so much funnier, but it was something like, "Oh, now nobody's safe" or something. He
Yeah.
was like, "Y'all are coming for Ellie Kemper." That's all I knew. And I'm like, "What skeletons or inappropriate behavior could Ellie possibly have?"
This is literally what it is. So I'll tell you what the internet version is and then what
Okay.
it actually is.
Okay.
So the internet version is that Ellie Kemper went to a KKK beauty pageant and won an award for a Klan beauty pageant in Missouri where she grew up in 1999, and she is a secret white supremacist. And we have to This is real. This is what the internet said.
Okay.
So the truth of what happened is that Ellie Kemper, first of all, so there's a couple things people learned about Ellie Kemper they don't like. One, biggest thing, she comes from a rich family. You come from a rich family and you're successful,
People don't like you.
they hate you. Okay. Didn't know this till recently. But the Kemper family in St. Louis, Missouri, apparently very wealthy. All right. Now there is some event, some like weird, some kind of beauty pageant that she was in, and there's a bizarre name for it. I'm gonna actually look up the name of it in a second. All right, let me look it up now because it is relevant to the context. It's a very weird name. So while I do that, give me a second here. Talk about something while I'm looking this up.
Yeah, I don't know what our fascination with hating rich people
Jealousy, basically.
is. I don't know. I mean, just to me, it's like, I mean, sure, there's a lot of like shitty rich people.
So she was crowned Queen of the Veiled Prophet Ball. Okay.
Okay, it does sound sketchy. All
So-
right, Twitter, I'll give that to you.
Okay. So here,
Say it again. What is it called?
the Veiled Prophet Ball. Okay, so I listened to a podcast.
That sounds like a Harry Potter edition.
It does. Okay, so in the 1870s,
Heard of it?
right? This organization, this event was founded that I guess had, it was 1870s Missouri. Of course, they were racist then. So I guess at some point in history, from 1870 until like at some point in time, this organization had this ball that banned blacks and Jews from participating because it was America in the segregation era. Okay,
Sure. Well, and white is supreme.
you know what I'm saying here?
Sure.
Okay. In fact, Missouri was one of the biggest like Confederate leaning states. Okay, so we got all that. Okay. So fast forward to 1999, this ball, which I guess vaguely had some connection to the old ball. So the way this ball came about, there was some gentleman, I don't remember his name, but he was like a big influential figure in St. Louis and was trying to that was a point in history, I guess, in American history where like cities were competing for like big events and cultural significance. So he went down to New Orleans and saw Mardi Gras and he was like, we should do this here. Because Chicago was on the up, New Orleans was on the up, St. Louis was kind of the city in the middle. And he's like, let's do big events. So this big ball happened. By the way, there's no official association with the Klan. It was segregated, but people just made that part
Was
up.
it segregated in 99?
No, it wasn't segregated in the past like
So Ellie
40
Kemper,
years.
so she grew up in a family that probably was associated with folks that have unconscious bias that are probably for sure racist.
I don't even
But
think
she
it's,
grew up, but wait a minute. No, I mean, I'm just saying that it's like, yeah, to say from 1870 to 1999, did the, original indoctrine of what that event was like hold through? Probably not.
I think
But generations and generations of people, you don't change too much, I mean, I'm from the South. I know that it's like, people who won't say they're racist, but like will still whisper when they like, they'll be like, oh, well, because they were like a black person. I had a good friend of mine who did that recently with me. Now let me finish. When we were out to eat and I go, what did you say? I'm like, you're whispering? You don't have to whisper that.
I think with that example, people are much more afraid if they don't know what the rules are anymore, so they just whisper because they don't want to like offend anyone or get anyone in trouble. But what I'm saying,
The rules are, if it's a black person, you can say they're a black person.
this example right here proves that anything can get you theoretically canceled. So anyway, the whole point is this.
I know what the point is. It's just boring. It's boring.
All right, we'll move on from it.
What? Well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to Twitter, like, boring. That's absolutely boring. If I was Ellie, I mean, what do you even do?
She hasn't responded. I mean, her reps aren't responding. But what I'm saying is, it's funny that. So anyway, so the event officially became integrated in like 1971 or something. So it had like some vague association with a racist ball, and she in '99 won it. And somebody on the internet dug this, somehow found a magazine where her photo was in it, and it was like, and because people on the internet love to just make like, it was tracked back to like one Twitter person who like put this up first, and then everybody jumped on it because when the world isn't in chaos, we have to invent chaos. But my attitude, here's what I wonder. I wonder if people actually think that
No,
you think it's all fabricated.
100%. I don't think anybody actually cares. I think that is so absurd
Yeah.
to make that. There are so many assumptions in that. If this is a trial and I'm a judge and somebody brings that to me, you know what I say? Circumstantial evidence. None of that is based in, and I can't do anything with that.
Yeah, I mean, there haven't been any like actual calls to cancel her. It's all just like, but that's what I'm saying. I know that having a podcast and creating content and stuff, it's a bit hypocritical to say this, but like, everybody doesn't deserve a voice. In fact, most people don't. We tried it. We gave everybody a chance to speak, and we blew it.
But I don't. I honestly, I'm gonna go on record. I don't feel like I'm annoying. I'm a lot of things, but I don't feel like I'm annoying. And I also feel like I got a lot of other things going on too. There's a difference between, I feel like on the internet, everyone's just like, it's the voices of people that are bullying
Yeah.
that I don't feel like should be allowed to have a voice.
It's that, but I think it's a lot of things, because I think there is an element of people looking to create controversy, but I also and this is where you and I tend to disagree a lot. We never seem to find the common ground, on this reality. But I am of the mind many times that when you create a society that we always have to be fighting against some injustice, people just contrive it out of nothing. People look for this because they're convinced that everything is evil and racist in society. We must always look for it and destroy it. And those things do exist, but then you end up with situations like this where people just dig up nonsense and be like, see, that's racist too.
But they're different things.
But this is an example of when someone clearly misinterprets.
They're not misinterpreting anything. They know what they're doing. And I'm sorry if you're just listening. I'm eating my early evening Tums.
Okay.
Because I have heartburn constantly. 35 weeks pregnant. No, this is a bullshit. Like, this isn't, there's a tape recording of somebody from 2002
Right.
saying the N-word. Okay? That's a little bit more like, okay, this is problematic.
Sure.
Ellie Kemper, in 99, just being in an affluent family in St. Louis, which I don't know if you've been, no shade, not a lot going on.
Well, hear that, St. Louis.
Sorry.
It's the last time you ever tore through there.
I will say, I believe it's the, is it the Children's Museum that's there? There's this one museum that's like, it's all like tactile, and it's out of this world cool. It's the coolest museum I've ever been to.
All right. Sweet. Fun fact.
Cool. Well, you don't like museums. I don't know. To me, even like talking about it, like, I don't mean to like not give you conversation around it. I just think it's so absurd that I'm like, it's not even worth my energy.
I get it. It's just because it was like all over the internet today, and it was just like funny. It's just like a reminder of like, most things are dumb. Most things.
Honestly, if we were to rebrand America, that's what should be like on our flag,
Yeah. Well, you and I were talking about something else, so that should be not God bless America. Just most things are dumb.
Most things are dumb.
Well, I've said this over and over again, but everything, once Trump became president, it was just this domino effect of everything being ridiculous, and we seem to keep doubling down on that.
But but again, I don't feel, the other reason why I don't like giving energy to these things that are ridiculous is I feel like they do take away from the things that are significant.
But
And I feel like they do take away from the folks that are attempting to, you know, uh, abolish racism or all of these very real things that we're facing. Um, and some people are facing directly. Somebody I read today, and what do they call it? Like, oh, the global racist awakening of June 2020,
okay,
because like suddenly all of the world was like, oh, we do have a race problem. Like it literally wasn't until
yeah,
uh I don't even mean to laugh and then say George Floyd's name in the same sentence, but it just rang so true of like, gosh, we are, you know, just what are we doing?
yeah. I still am of the mind that if we were not in a COVID lockdown and people could have spent their summer going to Coachella and whatever else they do, it would have been very different. I'm not downplaying the significance of what those cops did to George and the
I don't
subsequent.
know. I think that was still such a it was so visceral.
Sure.
I think I don't really want to get into it, but yeah, I do think that the last year and what we saw in the media and the wrap up of Trump and all of that would have played out differently. I don't think he would have gotten so much attention, but I'm also still mad at the media for that anyway. I'm like, y'all are the ones that gave him a platform
Trump.
over and over and over
Yeah,
again.
because it saved their ratings. I mean, think about it. If you look at all the metrics of all the mainstream media outlets and how their viewership was doing, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, all these guys, it was doing terribly until Trump got serious about the 2016 election, and then they would cover him nonstop. He was on Jimmy Kimmel, he was on SNL, like everybody was jumping on board because they're like, "Oh my God, it's the freak show," not thinking he was going to win. And then he won. And it was the best thing for them because even though the liberal media was like, "It's the end of the world," it was constant. I mean, think about how many journalists, and I use that word liberally, right, quote unquote, made a career of this is what Trump said on Twitter today. That was like there were serious accounts, blue checkmark accounts, that their whole account was just documenting Trump's tweets and then making commentary on it. And then he's gone, and all of those networks are plummeting now because they're irrelevant. Nobody cares. It just showed the facade of what that supposed news is or was.
I don't actually know. I don't think there is anything happening in the news. Like
I
if
mean,
you're
there's
actually
tons of stuff happening. It's just like things that I mean, I'll tell you,
things that are relevant, that are actually changing the infrastructure and landscape.
I got something relevant for you. You want to see it? This just happened today in
That
California.
sounded like an invitation.
This just happened today in California. You ready?
Sure.
Oh, this is good.
Oh, wow. California Senate approves bill to legalize possession of psychedelics like psilocybin and LSD. Wow. So, in what capacity?
It's still not 100%. I think first they're moving to decriminalize it, and then it'll go through all kinds of different regulation, and eventually, let's see here. It says under the bill, the State Department of Public Health will be required to establish a working group to study and make recommendations regarding possible.
May I stop you? So, folks who can't read this, I'd slow down so that they can really take in this beautiful information you're sharing.
So the California Department of Public Health is now going to put together a group to study and make recommendations regarding possible regulatory systems that California could adopt to promote safe and equitable access to certain substances in permitted legal contexts. So now the next,
Who wrote that sentence?
probably some representative of the bill or something. I don't know why.
Wow. I mean, that you don't think that sentence is huge? Listen to that. To study and make recommendations regarding possible regulatory systems that California could adopt to promote safe and equitable access to certain substances in permitted legal contexts.
Wait, this is my favorite part. Listen to
That
this.
I mean, that sentence feels the way it looks when you watch people build like a physical pyramid. Like that, like that's just. I mean, that's crazy.
This is funny. Listen to this part. Mescaline derived from peyote is specifically excluded from the bill's reform provisions, quote, because of the nearly endangered status of the peyote plant and the special significance peyote holds in Native American spirituality. You know, I will say,
But at least they did that already, because you know what would happen is that all of a sudden,
there'd be all these white women.
some white woman on
Yeah.
Twitter
Right.
would be like, wait a minute, and I need points. I need racism points
It'd be
because
like,
I'm,
it'd be like Patricia's peyote, and then,
No, I'm just saying that she would come out and being like,
oh, she would be the one to condemn white
yeah,
people. Oh, yeah.
of like using mescaline because peyote is a spiritual plant for Native Americans.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So that was some good news, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, there's that company that that I've been following on Instagram, and I was like, how in the world is this legal? But they're basically selling psilocybin in like 2.5 milligrams. So
I mean, it could also be that like they're just rolling the dice, thinking that it's not worth the time of someone to prosecute. I don't know.
no, I mean it's like a like a I'll have to look into it and circle back to it.
Yeah.
But no, it's not like a
Let's order
chop
some.
shop. It's like a real thing.
Dude, I love mushrooms. It's my second favorite plant.
What's your first favorite plant?
Cannabis, obviously.
I don't know. You could have been like,
Cucumbers, like
I love a fiddle fig. I don't know.
no. I'm actually turned off to fiddle figs now that we have one dying in our house. It's just watching a slow death every day.
I'm trying to nurse her back to health, but it's just too big. It's a tree. It's a tree.
But you had to have it.
Well, because I thought there was more light in our downstairs.
I don't know where you thought that from. You've lived there since December.
But I got it closely. Listen, inside baseball, no one cares, okay? Listen to Common Ground. You can hear us fight about our house
Okay,
plants.
so it's just interesting reading.
2.5 milligrams of psilocybin.
Yeah.
That's just enough where you get the giggles, right?
It depends on your tolerance. But I mean, listen, if those motherfuckers at the FDA and Congress basically made it legal for Purdue Pharma and doctors to just give people copious amounts of fentanyl and Oxycontin, it's absurd to me. Like, we watched that documentary, and like, these are things that he wasn't breaking ground on news that we kind of didn't have a familiarity with. We know some people at a distance who've struggled with opiate addiction, and we've seen different folks who've shared how traumatic it is. So it wasn't. But
why don't you tell everybody what the documentary is?
The documentary is called "A Crime of the Century"
on HBO.
It's phenomenal, and it basically breaks.
It's a tough watch. I'm going to warn you.
It is.
It's a tough watch. It's 2 episodes, 2 hours each, so 4-hour doc, and it's a lot.
But it just breaks down things that, like, how people at Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family that created OxyContin, they just straight up bribed people at the FDA to give it FDA approval, and they went and found doctors who, are breaking their moral code of being good doctors and just
That's an ethical code.
ethical code. That's a better way to put it. And just prescribing copious. Not only were they like pushing OxyContin on people, but the one that made me the most furious was there was a woman who got really bad with the addiction. Her husband and children got her off it, got her into treatment. Doctor came in and basically threatened the family. It's like, if you ever question my prescribing of the opiates to this woman, blah, blah, blah. I'm her physician. I know best. She ended up dying.
But that's another perfect example of why
Spoiler, sorry.
Just because people are in positions of power or otherwise we know best. We know what is best for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why like so much of that documentary really made me sad and angry too, which is like, people blindly trust doctors sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, they have a degree.
Don't trust your doctor is what
What I'm saying is I don't believe in medicine. Don't trust doctors. No, but I'm saying there is the narrative. I mean, it's interesting that the narrative of this year and last year, which was that of like,
trust the science.
Yeah, like trust science, like trust doctors.
What does that even mean anymore? Trust science.
And
science is not a monolithic thing.
But it's also where it's like, just when we the internet loves blanket statements. Oh, do we love them? We love them. They look good on memes. They look good in reels. You can, make merch out of them, And it's like, it's bullshit. It's bullshit because there's no There's no room for conversation when we do that.
Yep.
And then you're creating narratives for people where, it's already hard enough to like listen to your intuition and then to follow it when you're in the face of something of like a doctor being like, no, this is what's, right for you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be boring you. So you just yawn in my
Oh,
face.
stop it.
But you know what I mean?
Of course.
And, but that was the other thing where it's like,
See, that's who I was the most angry with. I wasn't as angry at the Congress people or the sales rep
oh, fuck Congress.
Or-
That's the part I was the most angry
or the
about.
Purdue pharma people. Well, I was mad at them, but I was more like, of course you guys did this. I was the most angry at the doctors because I felt like of all those people, we, the public, put the most amount of trust in the doctors, and they just violated it so in such a gross way.
But Congress is supposed to protect us. That's their whole job.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody believes that anymore.
I think there are people that really do.
Well, I
Otherwise,
feel-
why are we fighting about politics? If you think government doesn't matter, then what are you doing getting online and arguing about it?
That's not. Well, there are a lot of people like myself who've gravitated to the Libertarian Party and the whole idea.
He loves anytime he can find a little plug. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, to me, you know what the thing.
Here we go.
I'm not going to get into it anymore, but
Go ahead. I'm going to edit this and I'm going to put waving flags behind you.
no, you're not. You don't even know how to do that. You're going to ask me to do it.
I know, but it'll look great.
No, the thing is, it's even though most people I really believe don't trust the government, they don't trust their representatives, etc. Of who's in there, they probably have someone they prefer, though, whether it be left or right or gold, that's libertarian, or green, right? Whatever party they affiliate with, they'd still prefer to have whoever they think is the best of the worst in office.
And that's wild to me because I no longer like.
That's why it's so funny when people were like, this past election, we're making changes, we're going to do it. It's like, dude, Joe Biden's been in government for like 40 years.
Dude, I know, but remember, because that's when we were still doing it as House rules, and I
Yep.
was so annoyed. I never once posted anything like pro, Biden-Harris, because I was like, yeah, obviously, like, I cannot listen to Trump. And like, I cannot do it for another 4 years.
Yeah,
My head will literally explode.
sure.
But I was like, y'all are, this is false. This is false for if you think for a second that anything is going to change. And then that's the thing now where it's like, they're mad that he, all the things that he said he was going to do at the borders, he hasn't done. The situation is basically exactly the same. There's still kids sleeping more or less in cages.
But the thing is, the border is the perfect example to me that people don't actually care about fixing the problem. They just want to scream.
When you say people, do you mean citizens of the United States or in the government?
I think the government doesn't care about fixing the problem to the extent that they certainly care more about winning elections and using the problem however they need to win elections. And I think the general public is unfortunately, large in part, incapable of realizing that in order to solve this problem, some terrible things will end up happening. So, like with the border, we've talked about this before. There's only two ways you fix this problem. You either what's so funny?
Sorry, I heard the American flag music in my head again, and I started laughing.
So this is the issue with the border, right? You have mostly Mexican, but Latin American people who are escaping hell. A lot of these people live around cartel violence. They basically live under terrorism.
Well, let's go back to that because then America is going to blame Mexican cartels and make it all their fault. Yet we have created a huge need for fake oxys and heroin and fentanyl. So we've only literally we've provided an entire business for these cartels as well.
Sure. Yeah, you know me. I'm absolutely opposed to the war on drugs.
I know, but I'm just.
The lights in the studio.
Oh my God, that just terrified me. But I'm just saying that, I don't know. Anyway, it's just also interconnected. Oh, it's fine.
But you're like really dark now. Let me fix your lighting real quick.
Okay. Well, I'll just keep ranting about my frustration. Which is just to say, yeah, where it's like the fact that there is still a war on drugs, but the government helped create a bill so that big pharma could sell more and more like opiates
Yep.
and then
But
fentanyl.
can I finish my point real quick?
No, not until I finish mine because I'm on a roll here.
Okay.
Of it's just mind-boggling to me that it's like that's okay, and then we're all supposed to care. That's what I mean. It's like I feel like I'm just watching a circus show. Like everybody's dressed up like they're in a circus, but they're going, "This isn't a circus." I know it might feel a lot like a circus. I know it feels like something you've been to before, but it's not a circus. It's not a circus. While someone's just like, feeding eh, peanuts to an elephant. It's like, dude, this is a fucking circus.
I agree. So can I finish the point I was trying to make here?
Yes.
Well, you brought it up, and I just want to explain. So, like the kids in cages at the border.
Oh, we gotta. Okay, yeah.
But I'm saying this is with the general public. If people get upset about, they're like, this is inhumane. It's like I agree, it's inhumane. What is the answer then? So you have two options here. You either A, when children come to the border, you just send them back, no question. You say, nope, go back. Doesn't matter if you're with an adult. Doesn't matter if you're alone. You got to go back. That feels pretty inhumane, right? Or you say, well, we just release them into the U.S. It's like, well, to who? Where do they go? You just like let children just enter the country like randomly? Like we don't have like, and then how many kids? Like, is there a limit? What's the age cutoff? So there's no good answer, and so we just focus on like our political opponents are doing this inhumane thing. It's like I got it, but nobody seems to have any clue.
But everybody's not. That's the problem. You already said it 15 minutes ago, which was if we solve these problems, there's nothing that anybody can run on.
I get that.
That's no. Let me finish, sir. That is where I get really angry. Because sure, those are big questions. Where do we place these children? We already have a piss poor foster care system to begin with. There's so many issues. All of these infrastructures are barely hanging on. These are great questions. Also, America has a fuck ton of money and the infrastructure to fix these problems.
Okay.
But they're not going to, because we've created a government system that is so convoluted. And then the people who actually make the rules, just like in that documentary about opiates, they're working together. So it's like everybody feels like Two-Face, where it's like on the one end, they're like, we're here, we're going to like set up a better infrastructure. And then on the other hand, they're remaking the laws with the people that are selling the opiates that are killing everybody.
I agree with you. What I'm saying, though, is that with the general public, when like this past election cycle, when everybody was like, Trump's got kids in cages, it's like, I got it. What would you do instead? What would your answer be to like?
Right, but arguing with other people, that's a waste. I'm saying where my real anger comes from is the fact that the left or the right is not actually interested in fixing these problems.
Sure, yeah.
Because the left, what I'm noticing now more and more, and not everyone, there are some voices that I really do appreciate. I do feel like they really want to change some things, but they're not going to be able to because DNC doesn't want them to.
Yeah. People forget, too, the GOP and the DNC, they are private organizations. They're not government organizations. They are privately owned, privately held monoliths of power, but they don't answer to anyone but themselves. Now, they win elections and become part of the government via their candidates, but people think that, like, oh, the national parties, that's the government. It's not. We just have been brainwashed to think that.
That's interesting.
They're privately held organizations, and that's why they were able to fuck Bernie so bad, and it's so hard to go to like really crack down on these organizations. Here's a question I have for you. Do you think it's possible for large organizations to not end up becoming corrupt? And I will answer, I don't think it is. I think in today's day and age with access to information, we know too much, and it doesn't seem like any large organization is able to function without, and I don't know if they start that way or they become corrupt, but like perfect example we saw this past year is like the leaders of BLM are all getting called out for, misappropriating funds. And I just read an article that the chapter head or one of the higher ups at the BLM of Minneapolis just retired. He's like, I'm stepping away because I've seen how the sausage is made. He didn't use that phrase, but he's saying like, I saw what goes on.
Thank you for clarifying that.
What goes on at the top. And he's like, they don't actually care about what's best for helping black youth.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, but BLM, the organization, has been under fire for a while.
I'm only using it as one example of many where it's like it probably did start with very noble goals as all. I'm not singling out BLM. It's just an example I used with all these organizations, and then they get so powerful that the people who run things goes to their head.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, do I think that a big institution can manage to not become corrupt? No. But do I think that there are systems that we could put in place that would give us a longer runway or would provide something better? Yes. Do I think any of that's going to happen in our lifetime? No. And that's why
Disband the Fed.
but that's why part of me is kind of I'm not going to say politically apathetic, but I guess to me now I can see I can see how the sausage is made. And so I'm not really interested in a lot of these like big conversations or like the marches and the like all the things cuz I'm like but
You're
I
not
feel
a
like
marcher.
but I'm just like well now I'm just wasting my own energy to false prophets. These people aren't going to do anything. They're not going to do anything different. The war on drugs is a perfect example. They've literally been losing, significantly losing for 50 years.
Well, yes, but I would push back and say we have made small victories. Cannabis and psilocybin is now, legal or becoming decriminalized. Those are small victories. It just takes, a long time.
Sure, it's not that I don't think that as a human race that we don't slowly create progress. I mean, obviously it's like is racism still relevant? 100%. Have we come a long way from slavery as, an overall overarching idea? 100%. And
And so Guido Barak wrote mood lighting, bow chicka bow wow. Thank you, Guido.
but do you know what I'm saying? So obviously like I agree in progress, but I just
I know I understand what you're saying. I guess what I mean is like I actually am surprised you're of the mind now where you've become as apathetic as you are. I'm simply saying with the war on drugs example.
because who would I have that I would go, oh, there's somebody that I'm like, I really think that they've got their finger on the pulse of what's going on. All
know.
these politicians are full of shit.
Well, so that's what interesting example, right? Is that Tulsi Gabbard has talked about, and other people who, have spoken kind of like on her behalf after like getting to know her. In the beginning of her career, they were all the higher ups, like Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton, were so excited because they're like, oh, she's a veteran. She's non-Caucasian. She's young. This is great. And they wanted her to be like the face of like, this is why the American military needs to be doing what it's doing. And she did the complete opposite and came out super hard. She was like, I was a medic in Iraq. I'm telling you, we should not be there. I've seen it firsthand. Get our American troops out of these countries. It is doing nothing but harming us, harming the citizens there, wasting tax dollars. Well, I'm just,
I got it. Yeah.
And then it was like overnight, the Clintons and all the higher ups of the Democrats.
Yeah, because no, people want puppets. They don't want you to tell the truth.
Right.
Because again, if we were telling the truth, it's like, the reason that like politicians actually put a lot of weight on the conversation of abortion, which folks that have had to have an abortion, whether out of choice or people that have, for the millions of reasons why women, choose or otherwise are forced also to have abortions that are re-traumatized every single time we do it. And every single time some white man who, is probably paid for one, maybe two, okay, gets on there and just shames women when talking about abortion and then claims to be this big C Christian. And they're like, well, it's like, so you're just so full of shit. And it's like the reason that we're doing that, not because anybody actually cares. Nobody cares that are making the rules. They care because it's a huge piece that they know is going to fuel people because it's an emotional sensor. It's an intrinsic value. And then it's just like, when we give the rope to our dog and pull it and she pulls and we pull and you pull. That's all it is. Great. Let's do that for another, 6 months during the, presidential cycle of figuring out, who we're going to vote for. It's like it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm just like, yes, I want to be informed enough of like know what's going on, but I no longer can give it like a ton of attention and energy because it's not going to change. I mean, we were talking about the homelessness crisis again today. And it was like I was already tired because I was like, why talk about it if there is, you know me. I'm
Yeah.
all about like don't bring me, don't bring me the problem, bring me solutions.
So back on my point before, the issue I see with the homelessness problem.
Why did you say that like I told you your point was wrong?
No, because we got away from it
Oh, okay.
with like the border thing.
Okay.
It's like people don't want to accept that like the way to solve these problems, unfortunately, someone is going to get the short end of the stick. So with the homelessness crisis, right? The way we do it is we have to create shelters in places where these people can live, and then you have to tell people, here's the deal. You either go to the shelter or you go somewhere else, but you can't just live on the sidewalk. And there's the term, homeless, unhoused, whatever term we've talked about how like it's too broad of a term. What?
I really hesitate to say this.
Say it.
I don't know how the term unhoused is somehow giving folks more value. Like, I
I
just
don't know because
listen.
everything is ridiculous.
But I'm all you know me. I'm all about, and this is a huge thing too, where I feel like so much of why um a lot of folks end up in disenfranchised situations and other things are like they didn't grow up in any sort of environment or people did not instill value in them, right? Came from traumatized homes. When you come from something that's traumatized, it just continues to traumatize you and it's a pattern. And so when you give people a sense of value, when you invest in them, they're much more likely to invest in themselves because it creates value, it creates honor, it creates a sense of self, a sense of self-esteem, right? So I'm all for it. But you know, yeah, a bunch of like 19-year-old, white kids from like Ithaca being like, no, the term is unhoused. And I'm like, I mean, okay, but also like that's not solving the problem. So like
It's the same.
where all we're doing is like micromanaging how people are supposed to talk about things. But okay, fine. But then if you're not actually like instituting, like that's just the thing now. It's like I feel like, you know, woke Twitter is or like the woke internet is just like it's just giving me a lexicon. It's just saying if you don't say these words, if you don't use these words, then like you don't give a shit about the movement. You don't care about oppression.
Right.
And I'm like, but you're not actually doing anything. You're not changing your lifestyle. The majority of these people, the bullies, you're not doing anything different to support them. You're just trying to use these words and these phrases to make yourself feel better so that you feel like you're doing something. Look how in support I am. And to me, that's just where I get angry because I'm
But
like,
it's the same thing as conservatives that go to church every Sunday and be like, "Look how hard I prayed. I'm a good person."
yeah, why don't you think that I'm like just disgusted by conservatives too? It's like all these, not all these, but a handful of,
I'm just saying it's the same thing. It's just the other side.
100%, which is why I'm saying I'm completely apathetic because the Christian rhetoric of the right infuriates me because I come from a family of Christians. Now, everything that they believed, am I on board with? No. But are they genuinely good people who take care of their neighbors, take care of their community, like are really faith-based, have a good relationship with their higher power? 100%. And so it's incredibly infuriating to see people, tout this thing and then fool essentially good Christian people into voting for them. And then lo and behold, they had some, 19-year-old named Skylar blowing them on the side of the, I-75. And it's like, that's just the thing. It's like, it's all so hypocritical. And as somebody who is just like, tell the fucking truth, tell the truth.
But that's my point when we get caught up on these things, like, when we wanted to remove Aunt Jemima because it was like insensitive to have this cartoon of the black lady on the pancake box, fine. Or we want to rename schools and stuff. It might make you feel good, but that does nothing to help.
Well, that's why I said
Under
you should watch Sam J's. She referenced that exact thing.
Yeah. Aunt
Um,
Jemima was a real person, by the way, too.
well, she was just talking about. Okay, so Sam J is a comic, very funny writer for SNL, and she has a new show called Pause with Sam J on HBO.
Much funnier than SNL because SNL is.
Yeah, no shade. And but that's the start of it. Where in that first episode, and she was talking about that, and she was like, "I don't. What are y'all doing?" She was like, "Y'all look goofy. Like, what are you doing?" Being like, "Oh, this is something we're gonna do." She's like, "No, we just want y'all to like pay us." Like pay us like white people. I don't care, about your like janky syrup. Don't think that you're kidding me into being like, we care about equality. She's like, no, pay me. I don't give a shit. Like,
It's funny.
and it's true. And like, again, I mean, all people of color have different points of view on all of these things. Obviously, they don't all feel the same. But I do feel like that's a narrative that does exist a lot more that we don't necessarily give as much attention to because it's not as intriguing,
Of course.
It's like,
It's also like if you want to really help like an inner city black community, you should like put money towards building a healthy grocery store or something that the community could directly benefit from. Nobody there gives a shit about the Aunt Jemima picture on the pancake box.
no, and no one cares that you put BLM and then like, all five fist, with all of the different skin color or like skin tones or whatever from emojis in your bio. Like, what does that mean? To me, that's like signaling. And I don't think that like, I mean, I do know a handful of people that I think are good folks and are doing good work that do have that. I understand. I don't mean to shit on it completely, but it's just more of like wanting to bring that to our awareness of like, it's action based. We have to do things differently.
Yeah.
And not just in support of black and brown communities, but like in all of this. Like I've even slowed down of how much I'm like reposting about certain topics on my Instagram stories. Cause I'm like, if I'm not actually calling my senators, I'm not gonna post this on here being like, call your senators.
I do wonder what percent of people actually call their senators.
I would say probably half.
I think fewer than that.
And I'm like, until I've actually done the action, I'm not posting it. It's the same thing of like, rather than being like, pay black women and like touting this whole thing. And I do think that representation is important of like,
Sure.
especially of white people to, show these things certainly. But I'm also cognizant of like, I also don't want to like, I don't know, placate the black women in my life that do support me and I support them. Like, I'm like, okay, instead, why don't I just like go and do that in my daily life? Like,
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
There is
It
something
doesn't
of
need
like,
to be so performative.
yeah, like what? So everybody can be like, oh, Rachel's a good white person,
Right.
Because that's what creeps up is that feeling of like, oh, well, I want my friends of color to know that like I know about the thing, like I'm posting about the thing. It's like you don't get points, Rachel. Like there aren't points of like,
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it's quite common that people wonder in their head like, well, what would I have done in the 60s during civil rights, or what would I have done during abolition with what kind of white person would I have been? None of us know. We can think what we would have been. We'd all like to think we'd be on the good side, but at least half of us wouldn't. So I think what I'm saying is I think
I was like, that's an interesting thought. What are you saying?
okay, let's go back to like segregation, right? When it was the first big waves in like the late 50s, early 60s with people like Dr. King really inspiring America like this has to change. Well, a large swath of the country of white people was like, no, it doesn't. And they were fighting it. So I think people wonder like, well, I don't want to be on the bad side now. So they misconstrue good intentions. And because of the way we consume information in media today, does that make sense what I'm saying here?
I don't understand what your point is, and I'm sorry I'm so fidgety. Your son is kicking the crap out of me.
My point isn't. It's not only about look what I'm a good person. I think it's to tell themselves like I'm on the right side this time. Like they're just like it's just a way to be like when you see the photos of the Million Men March, being like, see, I'm there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong. I'm not condemning people who are posting and reposting. I'm simply also saying if there's not action that's followed up with that,
It's hollow. I agree with you. I'm just expanding.
hallow?
Hollow.
Okay.
Hollow. Listen, I'm tired. All right, we did a lot today.
But I hear what you're saying. I mean, and I still think it's important to like, you know, vocalize and talk about it and and remind people certainly. Um I'm just I think, admittedly it's like I I went through that like racist awakening um probably more uh when Trump became president. I was guilty of that. Of that like
Not realizing.
just not realizing how racist our country is. And I know not everybody who voted for Trump is racist, blah 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 blah. Blah. But I'm saying uh that was the first time that I really was like, "Oh wow." Because, my mom's very liberal, like, when I was like 5 took me to the, MLK museum and was like, "This is history, like this is real, like these are things that you need to know." And so I feel like, yeah, as like a white person I was like, "I'm aware." Right?
Sure.
Um but but I'm still white. I didn't have the experience of, that black and brown people have. So yeah, I think I went through that like holy shit moment then. So I think, I had a much different perspective on it through this last year, but I'm also finding my footing of what does it really mean to be in support of other communities and other causes in a way that is authentic and is working towards educating myself and learning from people and providing opportunities for people when I can and what does that mean on a level that feels authentic rather than performative.
Okay. Sure.
So that's just a little bit about me.
I think that's great.
You don't I can't tell if you're being
No, it's just sometimes when
Oh.
you go on a roll like that, it's easier for me to just let you go
Oh.
because then it's like, don't interrupt me. I'm like, okay, so I'm just letting you pontificate.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks.
Yeah. This is basically the Rachel LaForce show at this point.
Oh, that is so not fair.
You sure?
Yeah.
Wait, I did have a real question before. We're almost at an hour, but we can end on this. So, it's Pride Month. So,
So get gay, baby.
thumbs up to all our gay, non-binary, queer.
I know, but I will say, even as soon as today, like, and everybody, again, all of a sudden, it's June 1st, everyone's like, don't forget. Like, we're all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, now I'm going to be bullied for another month about everybody being like, if you don't care about every single thing that we care about in regards to the trans community, you are transphobe, where I was already like,
But that's why my attitude is like, okay. Because at this point, everybody, listen, this is what the past couple years have really taught me and solidified in my brain. There is no amount of anything I could do that would not make me safe from being labeled racist, sexist, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, any term, no matter what I do. So
sure, they came for Ellie Kemper.
exactly. So my attitude is like, I feel pretty good about the decisions I make. You want to have a face-to-face conversation with me? I'm all about it, baby. But you want to call me some names? I don't care. Try and cancel me. I didn't do anything. So if you're like, you're this, you're that, I'm like, I'm sorry you feel that way. If you want to change your tone, I could talk to you in person.
No, I know. I'm more being silly. I just meant more of how like immediately
I know.
It wasn't even like, hey, happy Pride and like, but again, every single person that was posting those things are not actually even a part of the LGBTQTIA community.
LGBTQTIA. What's the TIA? You had 2 T's there.
Oh wait.
It's LGBTQIA.
Oh, thank you.
Which I got to be honest, the I's and the A's. Come on, get out of here. That's ridiculous. I'm not including
Okay, well, I'm not saying that, Alex. That's not a good.
You know what A is for? Asexual. You don't need a group, asexual people. There's like 2 of you on Earth. I don't have any sexual preference to anyone. No one's discriminating against you. No one. Guys, come on. What are we doing here?
I know, but
Gays and trans and all that, I got it. Hey, I want you to have the same rights as everybody else. And asexual people. You should have the same rights as well. But like, there's no historic persecution of asexual people. Be a priest. Then you don't have sexual desires.
well, I would actually argue don't because turns out most priests actually have very intense
that's
sexual
dark.
desires.
That's dark.
Well, that's the world.
No, I agree.
That's why I love when people are like, "Oh, that's dark." I'm like, "Is it? It's real. It's what's happening."
Dude, I remember there was like a hilarious one of those moments that like
I love when you call me dude.
yeah, you're a comic and you know, come on, man. I remember there was like one of those like funny viral moments.
Yeah, because you're a comic. Come on, man.
Where like Bill Burr was on one of those like morning news shows and they were asking him he was making jokes about like priests molesting kids and they were like, "Bill, do you think your jokes might have gone a little too far?" And he's like, "I don't know, don't you think the Catholic Church went a little too far when they covered this shit up for decades?"
Yeah, that's what I mean. Where it's like, there's certainly things that are distasteful, you could argue, but to say like, did I go too far? Oh, I'm sorry because I talked about an actual thing that was like happening.
I know, it's so ridiculous.
But yeah, it is Pride Month.
Mhm.
I thought you were going to say something. You started.
I did, but then you went on a tear.
I know, so I was bringing us back.
So now, a lot of the pride parades have said specifically they don't want any police officers in the vicinity whatsoever. They're officially going anti-cop as part of pride. And I just think it's look, feel how you feel about police. I have mixed feelings about cops. I think cops as individuals, some of them are wonderful, some of them are monsters, and they're in many ways an unfortunate necessity. We need to have a civil society. But it's just sort of bizarre to me that the pride movement has just been like, yeah, fuck cops. We don't want you anywhere near our thing. It's like, what anti-gay thing did the cops do? And why are you anti-police? I'm not even saying you can't be. If you are, sure. But it seems sort of odd that, like, because a year ago, these racist cops in Minneapolis killed George Floyd, you don't want them at the gay pride parade now?
Well, I think let me walk us back. I think there's been a lot of shootings of black and brown people even since then. So I think
Sure.
it's continued. I don't think it was like, oh, the one time that they, murdered a black man unnecessarily. I mean, I think
Okay, yes, I agree. It just seems it just feels performative more than like, what is
I don't know, maybe they just want to do Molly and dance in the street. Like maybe it doesn't even have to do with anything political. Maybe they're just like, listen, it's going to be a much easier time if we don't have cops there. And they were like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's say that.
Listen,
like
I'm just imagining all these gay dudes. Like, we want to go full dick out all day, and we don't want to get arrested for public indecency.
But do they arrest people for public indecency at pride parades? I feel like I've seen many body parts at pride parades.
I think you would have to I would think you would have to put your penis in someone's face against their wishes to get arrested.
Wow, this episode took a turn.
No, I don't think they do any of that at pride. I just think it's like woke signaling. They're like, see, we hate cops too. It's like, okay, I guess, sure. If
Maybe I haven't done enough reading about it to be able to know.
Now, they did say police out of uniform are welcome to attend. So if you are a cop and you're off duty, you're allowed to come. But you can't be a uniformed police officer on site.
Okay. I don't feel like that's cop bashing.
Well, it is kind of funny.
I mean, if that was the, take somebody's like making, I'd be like, I feel like they're saying all are welcome. We're just not interested in having, but is that something that they can say? Can't cops just do what they want? Like they can't go, we're not going to have cops here. And then the cops go, okay. How does it work?
I don't know if they can. I think it was more of like, we don't want you. You're not welcome.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And again, I'm not even, look, dude, do what you want. I don't care. Again, like you always make fun of me when I bring it up, but I'm libertarian. So I'm a advocate for like free choice, free expression, whatever you want to do. If it doesn't physically harm someone else.
Sure.
Absolutely. I'm just a little sus as to why.
Sure.
It feels very performative. Like, were the cops making Pride unenjoyable before? I don't know. I mean, again, I don't really have a dog in this fight of they should or shouldn't. I'm just like, it's very interesting.
I mean, who knows?
Okay, I guess you didn't care as much as I did.
I honestly just don't know enough about it to really have an informed opinion.
That's fair. Well, hey, listen, given what we talked about earlier, that's a smart thing, you know?
What do you
Silence
mean?
is not violence. Silence should mean be
I'm
silent,
thinking.
do some research, collect your thoughts. He's kicking still?
Yeah, sorry. We might have to call it. I can't sit anymore.
Okay. Well, guys, this has been Common Ground. Our son is coming soon,
He'll be
a
here.
month or less.
What's up, Tucker?
And hey, Mr. Tuck. Hey, Tucker, I have a question. We're gonna log off soon, but I've been trying to understand the appeal of cigars. I know you're a cigar aficionado, and I've tried them, and they're fine. But I feel like you seem like a guy, and I know a few of these guys who like love cigars, like really love them. Our friend David loves cigars too, and I don't know. I don't quite get why they're so awesome. I'm not shitting on them; they're fine. I've had them. But just I would love to hear from a cigar aficionado like yourself. What is it about the cigar experience that makes it so magical? And maybe I love weed too much. Maybe that's my plant of choice.
But I told you the reason I think that you're not drawn to them is it's too long of a thing.
No, because I like sitting and smoking a joint and relaxing.
Yeah, but a joint is not nearly as long as then you like smoking a joint, but then being able to be high and like do other things.
Sure.
Like just sitting in a chair to enjoy a cigar, you're too ADD. You couldn't
Well,
do that.
I feel like also for me, the way cigars work, if I'm smoking one, I have to either be celebrating something or like plotting something evil, like a takeover. Like cigars
That's
to me,
funny.
like I
There's
feel,
no in between. It's celebrating or plotting.
or I feel like the way I look.
That'd be a great name for a cigar store.
What?
Celebrating or plotting.
Too long of a name.
Okay, well.
I also feel like my appearance, like if I have a cigar in my hand, I just look like I have more back hair. Does that make sense?
Oh my god, that's funny. That's very funny.
Does that make sense though? Like I feel like I
Yeah,
look.
that's why I said it's funny. 'Cause
Yeah.
it resonated. I understood what you were saying.
Okay. Well, anyway, if any of you guys have any thoughts on cigars, I like them enough. Like they're fine. I just don't. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, there were other. Oh, here we go.
You need to start off by building a library with lots of leather chairs and old books with a bottle of bourbon. See, that does sound awesome, but I would want to smoke weed in the library. I would, and bourbons. I like a little bourbon here and there. I think the issue is the ambiance of the cigar lounge looks awesome, but I would rather it smell like cannabis, which doesn't really make sense. Like those two things don't really go together.
I feel like you could make it anything you want.
Well, I was
I
smoking.
feel, I feel like you're blocking your own dream.
I was smoking a tiny bit of weed before we started, and you're like, dude, I'm pregnant. And I was like, I know, I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Even though you're on the other side of the room, you're very far from me right now.
Yeah, I mean,
There's like 10 feet between us.
sure, and okay, but that's not that far. Weed is like a very potent, but it was also more that I was just like, oh, I'm sorry, what are we on vacation? Like just randomly, like. But I guess it's also I associate being here in early mornings.
Yeah, it's 7:30, and I just had like 2 tiny hits.
Yeah, I'm not coming for you.
Well, sounds like you are.
Okay. Guys, this has been another episode of Common Ground.
So,
We have been slow to roll these out recently. Again, that's on me. I'm very preg. But hey, stay with us. If you are new, if this is the first episode, we have like almost 100 episods.
we're getting there.
You can go back and listen to. If you like this, please let people know. Subscribe. It'll tell you when we have a new episode out. Normally we live stream at 10 a.m. on Monday mornings. Right now we're doing it when we can get it done because that's the world that we're living in, baby. We're gonna get some more clips out. We've been so focused with our other show, Highly Unlikely, which if you like Alex, if you like cannabis, and you like learning about new things. You can follow at Highly Unlikely Show on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yep. And Twitter.
Oh, and Twitter. They tweet. I don't know what you guys tweet about, but you can do that too.
We just the same shit we post on the other ones.
Oh,
I
okay.
just copy it and put it on Twitter. And I just will say, so the baby is due either July 1st or sooner, maybe later, but hopefully not for your sake. So we might do a little hiatus or kind of have a mixed up schedule, some audio only episodes. But just Thanks for hanging in through this kind of.
Transition.
Yes, there we go.
But we're here, and we love you. Be well. Take care of yourself. Keep posting, reposting if you're into it. Take a break and educate yourself if that resonates with you too. Yeah.
And hopefully soon psychedelics will be legal and regulated in California.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.